Hi, and welcome to the next edition of the Check-In podcast, where we're talking about what leading wellness means at work and at school, and hopefully translating that into the benefits at home. We're talking with community leaders and builders. This morning, I'm very excited to introduce Amanda Munday. Amanda, thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
So, Amanda, first thing is maybe tell the audience a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so I am queer, mother of two, based in Toronto. I am an executive director of a national nonpartisan nonprofit called New Majority, and our goal is to help increase youth voter participation by actively working every election we can, hiring young people to work on campuses and places young people are, and we quite literally walk young people to the polls.
Awesome. So I know we had a little talk before the interview started, and I'm hopefully some of the information will come during the interview. But I know you said up to 800 students all of a sudden are under your employ, and that is
Yes.
a lot of onboarding, as we call it.
Yeah, so we describe it, for better or worse. I run a team it follows a bit of a boom and bust model. So we're a national nonprofit that operates across Canada. I have 7 full-time staff who work year round. I call us like the Coachella or Osheaga of elections, where it's like, people don't just start working on that concert the week before. You have a full-time staff who are planning for events all year. But then when a writ happens, or when we know there's going to be a snap election, like we saw in February of last year with Ontario, or the federal election also snapped early, 2 to 3 weeks before our best guess of the day an election is going to be called, the writ's going to drop, we start hiring. So we went from 7 full-time staff to 800 paid canvassers in a little under 2 weeks last March. And everybody comes on payroll. So we're doing like ROEs and T4s and payroll management for every single person who onboards. We train them, they work in pairs, they go through our training really fast. It's rapid fire, so they get 3 days of training and then they're straight out onto the field. And then they work until E-Day, and then we do some cleanup and exits, and then everybody heads on to other projects.
Love the reference to E-Day. That's funny. So first question then is what does well-being at work mean to you personally?
And I'm not going to lie to you and tell you I'm perfect at this. To me, I firmly believe that it's really difficult to separate the personal and the professional. So for me, well-being means showing up authentically at work, including the days that I'm not doing well, whether I'm anxious, if I'm stressed about, I don't know, a grant that I haven't heard back from yet, or, last year we went right from the Ontario election into this middle period where we knew a federal election was going to be called, but we didn't know when. And it was so uncertain and so stressful. Imagine I'm the ED saying like, yes, post the jobs or make the offer. And everyone's saying, can we offer? And I'm like, hold, wait, we don't know. We don't know if it's going to be Sunday or Monday or next week. And every day we were waiting. So that amount of anxiety and stress for me as the leader, it affects my personal life. My kids see me stressed. My partner sees me stressed. So well-being means, like, to me personally, it's acknowledging when I'm not okay and when I'm in a hyper state, and trying to let people know that, so that they can, if I'm a little snappy in a call, or if I don't show up for a meeting that isn't mandatory that I show up at, or if I sleep in because I was working until midnight, like, I'm the boss, but I'm also a human being, and it helps me to be well, to just tell people that's how I'm showing up at work that day. Because there's other times where I'm fine, and then you can trust me to make decisions and run this organization responsibly. And there's times I'm super stressed.
Yeah, I mean, that's a very honest answer. Thank you. Can you share one thing that your organization does? Maybe it's this one or a previous one, big or small, that really helps support mental health in the workplace?
There's a few things. One, I actively encourage everyone to seek out therapy in whatever form that looks like. So, we're a small nonprofit, but I prioritize extended health benefits for my team, because I really, therapy is very expensive. And if they're not investing in therapy, like, I'm a big proponent to be like, yoga counts, acupuncture counts, going for a walk counts, going to a group, getting a hobby. Like, I'm always talking to people on my teams about, when I see them, especially because I work with all young people, and a lot of times it's their first job. So I find they get really invested in doing a good job, and they can abandon their mental health at work. Maybe they're taking care of it in their personal life, but at work you see them stressed. And that's when we'll say, all right, we're going to do summer Fridays. And I do not want to see your Slack icon online. If I see you online, I'm going to be mad, because I told you to take a break and I meant it. And I find my team, I don't know. I think they want to do a good job. They see that we're small because I show up authentically. The downside of that is sometimes they see that I'm stressed, and then they say, well, Amanda's stressed, so, we want to help. And I'll say, like, the most help you can do for me right now is to take a break. If you can take a break and slow down, then I can trust that you'll get back to it, then I can get back to it. So we do a lot of forced
Yeah.
care on my team, and a lot of investing in themselves in whatever way makes sense to them. I've got a couple staffers who are gamers. It's not my scene. That's fine. But I hear about the Dungeons and Dragons for stress relief, and I'm thumbs up on that. Like, okay, if that works for you, you should do that. Or dance classes, or we've got a singer and a band. It's like, great. That sounds like a good area for you to get some stress relief, and we try to take some time to let people talk about the ways in which that they're finding relief and stress to battle stress, so that we know that everyone's kind of taking care of themselves and not going down, because I always say, if we go down, who's going to save democracy?
Yeah. And you know what I meant? Oh my goodness, there's a whole conversation just in your answer there. I'll say that one of the things that I've come to learn is, stress is stress. So you can actually have good stress because it gets you doing things and motivated and so forth. But then it's the bad stress, that chronic stress. And one of the healthcare practitioners that is on the capillary pick crew, he goes, forget about heart disease and cancers and stuff. He's like, the number one global killer by far is stress.
Yeah.
And it's that chronic stress. And okay, so what does that mean? Like, what does stress mean? And what is it doing to my body? Because that's where it lives. And I think if people spend a lot more time like researching exactly what stress does to the body, then we would learn ways of like, okay, how do I manage the bad stress and so forth? So, oh my goodness, we could talk forever about that stuff.
Yeah.
What's one challenge though that you're faced as a leader when it comes to supporting your team's well-being?
Such a hard question. I think it's especially managing younger employees, a lot of which it's their first job. There's a delicate balance for me in knowing when to push staff and when to back off.
Hmm.
And also when to stay out of their way, right? Because it is a job, and I'm not their parent, and I'm not their mental health provider. Um, and so, there's times where my team can say it's too much, I can't do it. We're never going to meet these deadlines, and I'm confident that they can, and I'm confident that on the other side of this push is a break. And there's other times where I need to listen to them, that they're stressed or that it's been relentless and it's been too much. And it's a real challenge for me to balance an open, honest sharing about my own stress and not put that burden on my team, their stress, and having space for it, and also getting the work done. So I do have to often I check in with my partner sometimes. I have to get out of it or go to other executive directors or other colleagues and say, is it reasonable that the team feels like we shouldn't work this next election because we just came off the last three? Or should we push because the horizon looks like there's a break right after? Like these types of decisions that I feel so responsible for, pushing my team to do the work because it's important, and then try to find places for them to stop. I I don't know. I question sometimes. I'll be honest with you. I was really, because the federal election came so quickly after the Ontario election, there were a few weeks there in that interim period where I was really wondering if I should have pushed us to work Ontario, knowing the Fed was coming, because we went into a federal election with an exhausted team. Like they were tired. And I kept thinking, should I have skipped it? Should I have skipped Ontario? Uh, but we had the lowest turnout historically in decades, had seen the under 50%. Youth voter turnout was terrible. Advanced voting days got cut from 10 to 3. It was the middle of winter. Like there were so many things against it. And ultimately, it was a really important election. Youth voter turnout in Ontario went up 9%, like historic growth. But we were tired. And they had to push for that Fed. So I don't know. I don't know if it was the right call. I think in the end we've relaxed, and looking back, I'm happy we worked it, but these aren't easy decisions to make as a boss and a leader.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, and it totally, um, uh, man, it totally resonates with me because when I was in the leadership position, you'd have your great years, and like the sun was out, and but anyone can sail a boat in calm waters, kind of thing,
Yeah.
right? And it's like, okay, how do I do it when it's a storm and so forth? And we're not perfect. You said it earlier. We're just human. We make mistakes, but we also have the ability to learn from that.
Yeah. Yes.
So we've talked about everybody else. So how about you, Amanda? How do you recharge your batteries? How do you protect your own mental health?
Oh, I mean, I keep sighing to the start of every one of your questions, like, it's hard. I mean, I have a history of my own mental health challenges, as I was committed to a psych ward when my daughter was 9 days old, 11 going on 12 years ago. My father died by suicide 10 years ago. My family has a history of mental health challenges. So I learned when my daughter was born that sleep is my number one most important asset. And it's also uh, what will take me down the fastest. And that's not true for everybody. I have a partner who can somehow sleep 4 to 5 hours and be fine. I don't understand their their brain chemistry. I don't get it. I need 7 or 8 hours of sleep or I can't function. And I can do less than that once in a while, but I start to get teary. I start to question my own decisions. So I have to prioritize sleep. And that means in every micro decision, it means getting off calls by 8 p.m., even if I have staff in the West Coast and that's only their 5 p.m. or their 6 p.m. and they want to get on later, or, someone wants to talk early in the morning, not taking red eyes for flights, making sure I travel during the day so I'm at a hotel and enough time to sleep. Like this is mandatory for me
Hmm.
as a parent and as a leader, because everything else I can manage. But if I don't sleep, I'm in big trouble. And then from there, it's annoying. It's annoying that the simple things work. I'm annoyed that a walk helps, but it does. I'm annoyed that if I go to Pilates, I'll feel better. If I lift a weight or two, I'll feel better. If I go outside and get sunlight, I feel better. If I eat, if I stop drinking coffee on an empty stomach, like some of these things you learn from years of trial and error, but I've started to build a little non-negotiable package for myself where I try to hold on to those things. They're pretty basic. I try to teach my kids, you got some non-negotiables here. Got to take a shower every day, even if it's a fast one. You've got to eat breakfast before you leave the house. Like, we try to have some basics here. Because I find then when I start to feel out of control, I have a foundation that I can go back to. And also, usually, if I start to feel really anxious, decisions are harder to make. I feel that burnout stress creeping in. Almost always, I can look to the side of my list of non-negotiables and clock that I've dropped some of them.
Yeah. Oh, thank you for that. And thank you for sharing your story. I when you were talking about sleep, we had the discussion prior to recording here. One of my things that I did was I went to a sleep management clinic, because my spouse had been telling me I was snoring and actually stopped breathing, at night. And, the auto guy response, I can say that, and maybe it's not just guys in this situation, but it's like, ah, yeah, that's fine. Don't just put earplugs in. We think about the other person. But then when I learned what it actually means to the body to have a good sleep versus not, yeah, like when I tell people that my panic attack came out of nowhere, I now know that that's different. It's, that was just when it came out, because of all the other things I wasn't doing. So, ah, Amanda, what advice would you give to other leaders who want to create this culture of care and mental health space in their workplaces?
In a sentence, I would say share as much as you're comfortable sharing, because we are not in a place yet as a society, certainly not in a professional space, where it is a given that it's safe to talk about mental health struggles at work. In fact, I still worry that it's a detriment. I have a book that I wrote about my postpartum depression experience, and I wrote that before I became an executive director of a national organization who has to go out and raise money. And sometimes I worry, like, I hope they don't Google me because they're going to read about the psych ward, right? and try to say, like, I'm a rational, I'm a good leader, I'm a good decision maker, and I had this thing that happened, it was shitty. Or, after following that really wild Fed election, we needed a break, a real break, like a long break. And I changed my out of office to, we've been running for months and the team is taking a break. I really would, plead to any leaders who are listening, like, you don't have to share your whole personal story, but if you can say you're managing stress by taking time off, or you're limited to the number of hours of email you're willing to take on in a week. If you can acknowledge, I'm taking a restorative break for no other reason than that's how I'm going to be more productive. Like, those things really do go a long way for the people who need to ask for help and feel shame in doing so. It's not everywhere. It's not everywhere. It's not in our major leader. I would love to see some politicians talk about taking a mental health break. I think about it all the time. Like, how stressed is Prime Minister Carney? Is he stressed before he went off to Davos and did that speech, or is he cool, calm, and collected? Like, I'd love to know, because I'm stressed. I'm stressed on their behalf. So it would be nice to know that that's a regular thing we're all dealing with, and we're still showing up to work, and it's going to be okay.
That's a great example. Like, we're very quick to, obviously, whatever your political party is and all that stuff, but we're very quick to judge these politics. Like, he's only deciding the future economic viability of Canada,
Yeah.
and dealing with someone south of the border that is, you cannot predict anything,
Yeah.
other than he's unpredictable. So
Yeah.
that's a huge stressor too. Doesn't matter what party lines you follow.
Yeah.
Um,
So is he
one of the-
prioritizing sleep? I'd love to know. Like, that's the strategy, right? Like, is there a sleep plan here, or is
yeah.
it like, or any like leaders of banks or T1 organizations, major lawyers, like any high pressure job? they're high pressure. And I often hear people say to me like, well, yeah, you can't have like, a high pressure job and a big salary and no stress. And I'm like, yeah, I get that. But how are you managing the stress?
Yeah.
How are you managing it? Is it sleep? And if so, are you prioritizing it? And is that how you're successful? Or is it because you have a team that's making it easy for you? Like, I would love more people to talk about what their coping strategies are to battle these things, because we keep talking about preventing burnout, but what does that look like in everyday practices? And when do we acknowledge that it's safe to say I'm not perfect at it? And sometimes I go down and then I get sick and then I get medicine and then I get better and we keep going, right?
Know this, Amanda, if I'm ever prime minister, that I will actually be sleeping, and I'll probably sneak in a 20-minute nap at some point.
This is it.
Yes.
That's a leader I want. I want to know
Yeah.
that our leaders are napping.
The 20-minute
Okay.
nap, I need that for my afternoon rush. So
We need a nap, more naps.
here's the last question here is, when the day comes that you get to retire, if you so choose, like, how would you like to be remembered as a leader?
What a question. I mean, ultimately, I hope to be acknowledged as someone who was authentic, and kind. You know, I think life's too short to be a bulldog, to be angry and brutal. I don't think it's worth it. Like, we're all just like atoms floating in space. Like, let's just try to, like the kids at work say, be so for real. It's just, it's work and it's important. And we do passionate things, especially in civil society organizations. But if we can show up authentically and share our stories and be kind and treat people with kindness, regardless of opposing views or not, I really think that's what I try to model.
Hmm. So I'm going to thank you for keeping the streak alive with everyone that I've interviewed, because not a single leader has said, "Oh, I want to remember that I always hit my budget, or I always hit my plan, or anything like that." Right? Everything was on the human level, right? But obviously, it's important to hit our targets and so forth in different organizations. But you're remembered for being kind and compassionate versus, the leader that won all the awards, whatever it was.
Yeah.
And last one is, what gives you hope for the future?
Oh,
For
youth.
future leaders?
Oh, youth. I mean, youth are not apathetic, especially our young adults. Have you ever talked to a young person? Like, they care. They care so deeply and they have so much ideas. I I am not invested in the future AI. I don't trust it. I have hope for community, for a return to a less digital presence. I think young people are driving a disconnection from digital and reconnection with community. I think it's going to take a really long time, but I hear young people talking about wanting to be in community, and that gives me hope that, the perceptions of polarization, the perceptions of difference being, you know, irreparable are false. That we actually do have connection with community at our core. And I think it's young people who are going to drive that action to that forward long term.
Perfect. Amanda, that's it. Those are the 7 questions. And thank you so much for participating. I really appreciate you joining us today and sharing your personal story and being very authentic on this. It's not easy, but once you say it, it's kind of like out there, right? So
Yeah.
yeah, thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.